so let's draw, these are our lungs, okay? We've got, it goes into your heart. So that's just really simple. Obviously, we're going to do in a lot more detail in a little bit. Goes into your heart and then gets pumped to the rest of your body. So this is just going to be your body here. Then it goes back into your heart and then gets pumped back into your lungs. Okay, so this is our double circuit. Okay, looks a bit like a physics electricity circuit, doesn't it, at the minute? All right, so we've got our artery coming out of our heart, really high pressure. So we need that elastic fibers to maintain the pressure, and we need to cope with the pressure, and we need our muscular layer to maintain the pressure. As we get closer and closer to your body, the vessels get smaller and smaller. So then we're going to change into arterioles. So arterioles, very like arteries, but they've just got slightly less muscle in the walls, and they've got slightly less elastic fibers. Okay, so they can still contract and relax. Okay, and the contraction and relaxation also allows them to divert blood to other places. Okay, so has anyone heard of the fight or flight response? Has anyone heard of that before? Yes, I can see a couple of nods. So when it's the fight or flight, so it's a fight or flight or rest and digest, isn't it? So when we've got our fight or flight, we want to be running away. Think of fight or flight, you've got a bear chasing you behind you. Okay, we don't want to be digesting food at that point. There's no point, is there? We need to do all our blood to our muscles, get all our oxygen to our muscles to be running away. Okay, we don't want to be digesting food at all. Okay, so at that point, we're going to probably send less oxygen and less blood to our digestive system. Okay, so arterioles help with that, so they can constrict the arterioles that are going towards our digestive system to send less blood that way, so more blood is available to our muscles in our legs, let's say, so they can help control blood in that way. All right, but just think of it that the smaller versions of arteries. Okay, so they've got less elastic fibers, but they still do have some muscle layer, but it's less than the arteries. Okay, perfect. And they can contract to prevent blood going to certain areas of the body. So also think when you're really, really cold, that's why you get frostbite, because your body thinks we need to conserve our heat and just send all our blood to our major organs. Let's not send it to the end of your fingers. There's no point. And that's why you get frostbite at the end of your fingers, okay? And, they can go all black and things like that. All right, so that's your arterioles. So we're going round and we're getting to the rest of your body. Now, the next one we end up with, I'm going to turn these into like a dark red, is we get your capillaries. So we get these things called capillary beds. So if I draw it out here, so they kind of, all fan out. Okay, we've got lots of like interlocking bits between them. I'm sure on the other diagram there was a better version, wasn't there, than my drawings. Okay, so we get these things called capillary beds. Okay, now capillaries we can see here. They've got a very, very thin wall, so that's a key characteristic to have. They're really small capillaries. Okay, and in fact their endothelium, so the layer there, is only 1 cell thick. All right, so that's really important. So that provides a really short diffusion distance, doesn't it? Remember we talked about capillaries within the lungs and how the oxygen only has to diffuse across the alveoli, 1 cell, across the capillary, 1 cell, 2 cells in total, really short diffusion distance. Okay, so capillaries are just 1 cell thick, all right? Really short diffusion distance. And in fact, in some places, they're so small that they only allow 1 red blood cell across each time. It can only fit. They're that thin, only 1 red blood cell can get across each time, okay? And they're in these capillary beds, all right? If I go back to the capillary bed we had before in this diagram, so you can see these capillary beds. So this is a capillary bed. Can you see the kind of all spread out the capillaries here? Okay. That increases the surface area, doesn't it, of capillaries? If they spread out into tiny little vessels, that's going to increase that surface area to volume ratio. So this is giving oxygen to organs or tissues or whatever's needed. This is where the exchange takes place, and it's taking away waste, carbon dioxide, any, excess metabolites we make, anything like that. Okay. So it's by spreading off into these tiny capillaries that are really thin, increasing the surface area to volume ratio. Okay. Short diffusion distance, they're only 1 cell thick, and maintenance of concentration gradient, the blood is constantly moving. Okay. So there's capillary beds near our muscles, anything that's needed near our major organs. And there's also, you've got another set of capillary beds in your lungs as well. So we talked about those 2 weeks ago, didn't we? And how combined with your alveoli, they help keep that, really good diffusion of oxygen and CO2 and all that kind of thing. Okay. So that's how your capillaries. So you've got loads of capillary beds. They're 1 cell thick. Okay. Perfect. So that's 3 vessels we've done. Your arteries, your arterioles, and your capillaries. All right. So your next ones we're talking about are our veins. So let's draw our diagram again a little bit. What we'll just do is we'll do artery. Let's make it quite big. Arterioles. Let's make that a little bit smaller. And then let's do your capillaries that look like this. So this is all oxygenated blood at the moment, isn't it? So as we go across our capillary bed, our organs are going to use up our oxygen. So let's turn our blood now into deoxygenated. Okay. So now we need to go back up to our heart to be oxygenated again. So our next ones here are what we call our small version of our veins. So they're called our venules. So let me write that here. Ooh. Okay, that's how you spell that one. So venules. Okay, so they connect the capillaries and the veins. Okay, and then what we get next is we get our veins. So again, they go bigger. So as we get back to the heart, the vessels start to get bigger again. All right. So perfect. So we go arteries, arterioles, capillaries, venules, veins, back to your heart again. Okay. Now, remember me saying before, when we go through our capillary bed, we're losing loads of that pressure that we've generated from our heart. Okay, so the blood's flowing really slowly, not fast at all. So we've already done our transport of our oxygen, taking out our CO2. We need to get it back to the heart, back to the lungs to be reoxygenated and remove the waste. All right. We've got really low pressure. So the veins are a little bit different. If we look at the diagram that I've got here, you can see that they have a relatively large lumen compared to the capillaries that had a relatively small lumen. So remember, relatively in comparison, the veins have a relatively large lumen. All right. So if an exam you're asked to identify, is this an artery or a vein? You're going to look at the wall of the vessel and you're going to look at the lumen of the vessel. Arteries will have a larger wall, smaller lumen. Veins will have a larger lumen and smaller wall. Okay. So veins, they've got much thinner muscular layer. Okay. And they've not really got any elastic fibers in because the pressure's so low, they don't really need to stretch and recoil. Okay. They don't need to withstand that high pressure or anything like that. Okay. But veins do have something else in that helps them get blood back to the heart. Before I say it, does anyone know what it is? I'm sure Aria will know what it is, but does anyone else know as well? And we've already talked about them as an example. You can write in the chat if you want. Yeah, Ria, perfect. So they've got valves, and Aria, you put that for, yeah. So they've